Well, welcome everyone to today's session on insurance for support groups, and thank you so much for joining us. This session is being recorded and we will be available on the PCFA YouTube page, and we will also send a link in the next edition of the support group newsletter in the coming week. So if your members can't join us today, or there's an opportunity to rewatch today's session. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Mitch Witherington and I'm the head of operations for PCFA. You probably see my colleagues out and about. My team consists of Louise, who's our support group coordinator, Lindley in Victoria, Jason in Queensland, Stephen in Adelaide and gets out to Western Australia, and Mark is our Life Force program. And they're all in regular contact with our support groups, as am I. And we're often fielding a lot of questions about insurance. So we thought it would be timely to run this webinar. So thank you so much for joining us. To help answer some of those questions today, I've invited our insurance broker, Nicole Magro from Gow-Gates, and she'll be sharing more on this with you shortly. But before we do, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. I'm about to hand over to Nicole. Just as a reminder, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, if just for today, if you wouldn't mind just submitting them via the chat button at the bottom of your screen, we'll aim to discuss as many of those questions as possible during the session. And if we don't get a chance to answer your question, we will take those questions and contact you directly, or you're welcome to send us an email at inquiries@pcfa.org.au. Well, as I said, it's just a pleasure to have Nicole Magro join us from Gow-Gates. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen so I can share the presentation for you all. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to go over a few touch points here. The two main policies is the public liability, the voluntary workers, which you're covered for, uninsured risks, and we'll have some time for questions. So I guess we'll start with public liability and what is public liability. Public liability insurance typically covers PCFA for bodily injury. So an example could be tripping over some equipment at an event. Property damage, so someone accidentally damages a laptop. Legal costs, so it covers the legal expenses if PCFA are sued, and that includes things like court fees and lawyers' costs. And compensation payments, so pays for any compensation awarded if the injured party sues for damages. Now, in respect to the public liability for the support groups, the definition of a PCFA affiliated prostate cancer support group, it needs to have the primary purpose of supporting men and their families with prostate cancer. So the things that are typically covered, because you're not covered for absolutely everything you do, but what is covered is your monthly meetings, but the primary purpose needs to be to support men and their families with prostate cancer. So if that's the case, you're covered. If you're attending a community outreach event with the primary objective of raising awareness for PCFA, not just your own support group, then you're covered. And if your support group's doing the declared fundraising activities listed below in support of PCFA only, and you have an authority to fundraise, you are covered. So those activities are auctions, bake sales, collecting entry fees to monthly meetings, collecting donations at monthly support group meetings, organising morning teas, dropping off and collecting money boxes in local retailers, and Bunnings barbecues. If your support group's doing anything outside of those top three things in what is covered, you are not covered. So that might be raising funds for your group's benefit, particularly if you have your own ABN number. raising funds for multiple charities at a single event. So, for example, you're raising funds for both PCFA and Cancer Council at the same event, and raising funds for any other charity other than PCFA. So the support groups that are covered are listed here. So I guess any new support groups that were looking to come on board, if you have your own ABN number, you would need to go through PCFA to get added to this list.
Just to add to that, Nicole, so that's all support groups plus those ones specifically listed there with an ABN.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. So we've had a few questions and we've just put a few of the common questions we have got that have come through to Mitch. So one of those was, our support group is a group for all people dealing with any type of cancer. Will we be covered? And look, the primary purpose has to be supporting men and their families with prostate cancer. The policy is only designed to respond when fundraising and supporting the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia. And then the second question, the support group is there for men dealing with any type of prostate health concern, not just cancer. Will we come under PCFA's public liability? Again, no, the purpose needs to be supporting men and their families with prostate cancer. And then, can a prostate cancer support group fundraise for multiple charities under PCFA's public liability? And look, I just want to clarify, this is not PCFA trying to make things difficult for you. This is an insurer requirement. They only insure PCFA, so they're only willing to extend the policy to cover support of PCFA, not other charities. PCFA are the insured under the policy, and so the policy will extend to support and fundraise for PCFA, but not for other charities. And once again, it's not PCFA being difficult. This is an insurer requirement. So look, if you wanted to do anything outside of those three activities, you'll need to contact PCFA to discuss the activities. The insurer tries to keep things within a list to protect the policy. We've had other charities that have decided to do fundraising events that could be quite risky, and the insurer needs to know exactly what they're covering before they offer coverage. So any activities that fall outside of any of those things, you need to discuss it with PCFA first. And then will the support groups need to obtain authority to fundraise for all fundraising activities? And that's yes. A PCFA need a record of all activities raising funds. And that's not just insurance purposes, but that's other regulatory purposes as well.
So Nicole, I think we've got a couple of questions about, I think might be about public liability insurance. So shall we try and answer those now before we move on to the next insurance policy?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so we've got a question here from Bill. Bill's from Wongaradovik. We're having a golf day in support of PCFA and the promotion of prostate cancer. The golf club are running the whole show. We are just attending to help and talk about prostate cancer. Will be covered by the PCFA insurance. Will this event be covered by PCFA insurance?
Yes, so in respect of that one, I would say that that's you're just attending an event there. So I think back where we went back a few pages,
About the declared fundraising.
Yeah, so you're attending a community outreach event. Just on golf days, if you're ever requested to have insurance, golf days are actually quite difficult to get insurance for. So the golf club would need to be covering the insurance for that event. But if all you're doing is turning up to talk about prostate cancer, then you'll be covered there. But just ensure that the golf club have the actual event covered and you're not expected to be covering, for example, someone getting hit by a golf ball. You'd only be, but the public liability would only be if, you took a pop-up banner and it fell over and hurt someone or something like that. That's what it would be looking to cover for you.
Excellent. We've got another question here, and it's from Graham. Graham says, how many numbers of people are covered at a fundraising event?
So this is going to be different. If you're attending an event, that's one thing. If you're actually hosting events, if it's anything outside of the events listed, then you need to get sign off by a PCFA. Because the insurer would need to take a look at that event in detail if you're organising your own event. But I'm not sure if Graham's more you're attending a fundraising event or you're actually hosting and organising, because then they're going to have to answer an event proposal form if you're actually hosting, particularly a large scale event.
Okay. Another one from Jim. Jim says, my local council runs a seniors event that we will have a stall at, primarily to support awareness. Secondary is to raise awareness. Are we covered?
Yeah, so again, as long as you're not hosting the event, if you're attending the event and the primary purpose is to raise awareness, then you would be covered. But as long as you're not the one hosting the event, it's just a council-run event that you're attending, and they've just requested to ensure that you have public liability, and you're just doing things like handing out brochures, possibly collecting funds, but you're not actually hosting the event or doing anything outside of those raising awareness type activities, that's fine, you would be covered.
Correct. Here's a good question from Ross. What if a member of the support group self-harms after support group discussion and the family of the member then sues the support group? Will these legal costs be covered by the PCFA insurance?
So that one is a bit of a difficult one, Ross. If, say, for example, in that particular meeting, and we will touch on this later, you were given any sort of mental health advice other than sort of saying, I'm not a medical professional, maybe go and seek advice from like Black Dog or a mental health institute. You can't be giving any advice on anything medical. But look, you're covered for your support group meetings, and they do understand that you do talk about something that could be quite a sensitive topic. People are stressed when they're unwell. So the policy would be there to defend you, but with the caveat that you can't be giving any medical advice at these events, because the support groups, prostate cancer is covered for giving advice because they've got like the proper counselling hotlines and the like, but the support group's not covered for giving any advice whatsoever. So you can talk about this was my experience, but you need to seek your own, professional medical advice. So you just need to be careful you're not giving any advice whatsoever medical wise in any of these support group meetings.
Colin says in Griffith, Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, we hang banners in the town saying that and encouraging men to get checked, putting up the signs, are we covered if I fall off the ladder? It's a good question, Colin.
Yes, so that would probably more fall in the next policy we're talking about, the voluntary workers, because you're not paid by prostate cancer, and we'll touch on this next. You're volunteer, so if you were injured, that would be the most likely policy we would look to if you were injured while putting up a banner.
Yeah, and we have another question here, which I think we know the answer to because we touched it as one of our fundraisers. Graham has asked about Bunnings barbecues, and that is one of our approved fundraising activities. Is that right, Nicole?
Yeah, and look, particularly with Bunnings, the insurers are comfortable with them because so many charities do them, and they know that Bunnings have a very strict risk register that you have to follow. So Bunnings barbecues in particular, they're comfortable with. That's why they're covered. Not any type of barbecue would be covered, but because Bunnings have the particular setup for you and the risk controls in place, the insurer is comfortable with the Bunnings barbecues.
Yep. And we've got a question from John. And John says, are we covered if we are collecting a donation offered from an organization with only giving an acceptance thank you, not fundraising? So sometimes, Nicole, we send some of our life force members and some of our support group leaders go out and collect a check on behalf of PCFA. And so when they're out there doing that, volunteering, are they covered?
Yes, yep. So you'd be covered for that. If you're only sort of accepting a donation, that is covered.
Yeah. I think I've answered all the questions around public liability at the moment. So,
I'll just
um,
touch on so one of the support groups, one or two of the support groups has actually come to us directly because they've wanted activities that are outside of um what you're automatically extended to covered, and we can organize a policy for that. You can get it from anywhere, but we're happy to assist you with that. Because if you're doing stuff outside of those activities, then the policy is not going to extend to protect you. So if you want to do something in particular that's a little bit different, then we can organise a policy for you directly to cover things outside of what you're automatically extended to cover.
and if you come through us first, we can look at it initially, and then we can take that through to Nicole as well. Lovely. Thanks, Nicole. Well, we can always come back for more questions at the end, but let's move on to the other policy which is relevant for our support groups.
Yeah, so the voluntary workers. So voluntary workers typically provides cover for if a volunteer is injured while performing their duties. The policy can cover things such as medical expenses, but not what's covered by Medicare, because insurers aren't actually allowed to do that. So it's not as though the policy just doesn't want to extend. They're not able to cover costs that are covered by Medicare. Loss of income if the injury prevents them from working. So if the volunteer doesn't work, then you don't get the weekly benefits. But if you do work and you're injured and you're unable to do your normal job, then the policy is going to cover you for some of your weekly benefits. Death and permanent disability benefits, and there's some rehabilitation costs in there. And then there's also reimbursements for costs incurred due to injury, such as travel expenses to and from treatment, and any home modifications that might be required due to a disability. So who does it cover and when does cover apply? So any unpaid person completing tasks and requests as directed by PCFA. This includes any direct travel to and from such tasks. If PCFA have given you an authority to fundraise, it's likely you'll be covered by this policy. Please note you must obtain the authority to fundraise for each fundraising activity. This is just so PCFA know it is actually an event that you're raising money for PCFA. So the voluntary workers policy will respond. If there is any claim lodged, it does need to come through PCFA, not us directly, just to ensure that it is only PCFA volunteers and the support groups that support PCFA that are lodging a claim, not someone outside of that. Just for example, the monthly support meetings, the support group leader and the nominated committee members, they're covered. And then fundraising and awareness events for PCFA, and any volunteers assisting with the approved activity. So this is just a rough snapshot of the cover that's provided. So death and capital benefits, 100,000. So basically what happens is that the wording has a percentage for each different injury that may occur, like permanent disability, you might get 85% of that 100,000. Death is 100,000. So it's available in the policy wording exactly the amount. But death and capital benefits up to 100,000. There's a fractured bone benefit of 5,000. And then, as we were discussing before, the loss of income and weekly injury benefits. So you're covered for 85% of the income up to $1,500. The benefit period is 104 weeks. So this isn't a replacement for income protection or anything like that, because it does have a limited benefit period of 104 weeks. And then the excess period is 7 days. So instead of a monetary excess period that you might be used to underneath like a motor policy or a home and contents policy, it's a 7-day excess period. So some of the examples that might sort of occur is a volunteer strains their back while lifting heavy boxes at a charity drive. Someone might trip over a banner while setting up at a Bunnings barbecue. A volunteer falls from a ladder while decorating a venue for an event, which is what we touched on earlier. A volunteer is pushed or knocked over in a crowded event space. So they're the kind of things that could happen. But basically, any injury, just contact PCFA, and they'll be able to put you in touch with us to help you through lodging a claim for voluntary workers if you were injured. So some voluntary workers questions. How do we know if PCFA have the names of our support group and committee members? So send an email to supportnetwork@pcfa.org.au with the names of your committee members, and Louise will be able to assist you. If we don't inform PCFA of our fundraising activity or obtain an authority to fundraise, are you covered? No, we need to know that you're actually having an event, or you may not be covered. And if a support group raises funds for another charity, will our volunteers be covered? And no, the policy only covers volunteers while raising funds for PCFA. Again, that's an insurer requirement because the premium is paid for PCFA, not for the other charities. So if you're raising money for another charity, I would request that you get their insurance to cover you. But you're all PCFA support groups, so I imagine the main intention is to support PCFA. Okay, so some questions.
We've got a couple here for you, Nicole. I think we've already answered this one from John. Do we need to notify PCFA to attend such an event? So I think John was talking about if he was collecting a check earlier. So and I guess if we're encouraging John to go out there or inviting John to go out there on our behalf, then we already have a record of that. But we mentioned before that we need to be notified and have an authority to fundraise as well.
Yep.
Colin in Griffith has another question, which I think you touched on as well before, Nicole. At our meetings, should we state or start with a caveat at the beginning of the meeting stating that we are not medically qualified?
Yes, so I believe that was touched on in Mitch, one of our previous meetings. Yes, it's not medical advice. So, they need to be speaking to their medical professionals for any medical advice. I guess people may talk through their own experiences, but if they're going to do that, we need that caveat at the beginning of the meeting saying this is not medical advice.
And PCFA can provide that, and really just to extend that to really any advice, but we're not professionals. So we can provide that caveat, and Louise can provide that if you send an email to support.network@pcfa.org.au. That can be provided. Jim here has asked a question about what is an authority to fundraise, and essentially, Jim, that is a record for us to know that you're out there representing PCFA to raise money for PCFA, and that's also to cover us for things like the Collections Act, and it gives you a record and a formal document that you can take out to the community with you when you're out there fundraising to say, yes, I have authority from PCFA to be fundraising on behalf of PCFA. Got a lot of questions coming through here. Come back here. So Colin again, do we need to keep a list of everyone who attends to help, including setup? And I don't know the context of that, Colin, but let's say the context is a support group meeting. Nicole?
Yes. So look, ideally, yes, we would like a list of everyone who was volunteering to help and set up. If people are volunteering for you, then like the people who run the meetings, for example, are volunteers. If people are volunteering, particularly if they're helping set up and they got injured, then I would imagine that they're volunteering for the cause. The whole idea behind keeping a list is to stop people who have nothing to do with PCFA trying to get benefits underneath the policy that's there to support PCFA. So that's the main reason we want to keep some kind of list where we can of who was assisting and who was helping. So someone that, twisted their ankle playing soccer on the weekend doesn't try and say, well, I did that while helping PCFA. It's really just to protect the policy because the policy is only there to protect people who are volunteering for the PCFA cause.
Great. We've got Tony, looks like he's out from the Limestone Coast Prostate Cancer Support Group. And might need you to go back on this slide, Nicole, but he was just asking, did not see the Limestone Coast Prostate Cancer Support Group on the list. Are we covered or not? We don't have an ABN or other registrations.
Yeah, so I can touch on that. Look, the support groups that don't have an ABN are noted as volunteers, and the public liability policy does extend to cover volunteers who are under the direction of PCFA. The reason why we need to list the support groups with an ABN number is because the policy does not automatically extend to cover other business entities type thing. So if you go out and get your own ABN number, the policy does not automatically extend to you. We need to endorse that on to the policy. So hopefully that clarifies, but I'm happy to answer more questions if there's more following that.
Good. And we've got another question here from Jim. So do we need an authority to fundraise for each person attending an event? And the answer to that, Jim, is not for each person. It's just for each activity that you are doing or to raise funds for PCFA. So for each fundraising event or each fundraising appeal, you would need to get an authority to fundraise for each one of those. It's not connected to an individual or a person. It's connected to the event that's happening or the activity or the appeal. And that can be obtained through our community fundraising team. Portia manages all those, but we can, if you send an email to the support network at pcfa.org.au about that event, we can, Louise can manage it from there as well.
Perfect. All right, well, oh, here we go. There's another one.
Oh, yep. Doug, our group is not a DGR, nor do we have an ABN. However, we do fundraise, and some of that is used by our group. This, I believe, should be acceptable, as in the guide for support group leaders and ambassadors on the PCA webpage. It says, among other things, as part of the affiliation relationship, groups are asked to adhere to accept responsibility for managing their own activities, resources, and finance. At present, we are looking at purchasing teardrop banners. So how do we pay for them if we are raising funds for PCFA only? So Doug, you're welcome to put in a reimbursement claim for those teardrop banners or apply for a community grant. Obviously, insurances change, and so year to year, we sit down with Nicole and the Gow-Gates team and our underwriters to look at what the policies are. And so we're giving you what the policies are for this next 12 months through to the end of June. For the cost of, if you have expenses associated with a fundraising event, then we can talk you through that as well for that event to help you cover those costs and how we can make that happen for you.
Okay, we will sort of just touch on some of the things that the groups are not insured for. And we did touch on this before. So the following classes of insurances will not extend to the prostate cancer support groups. So professional indemnity, and as we touched on earlier, that is giving any advice, including dietary, medical, clinical, mental health advice. That's not covered. So that's why, as mentioned before, having a caveat at the beginning of a meeting isn't a bad idea, saying that none of this is in any way professional advice and they need to seek their own. Directors and officers insurance and association liability insurance. So this is more important for the groups that do have their own ABN number, because if someone were to take action against your group directly, Say, for example, the ACNC did some sort of investigation into your group directly for the way you were raising funds. There's not a policy there with defence costs to cover you, because when you have your own ABN number, they can investigate you directly. And the reason why the PCFA policy can't extend to cover you is they don't have the oversight across all your bank accounts and the way you're managing things. So you can organise your own directors and officers policies to protect yourself, but the PCFA policy does not protect the directors and officers. And again, that's more relevant for the groups that have their own ABN number. Public liability insurance for your own prostate cancer support group activities outside of monthly meetings and fundraising and awareness exclusively for PCFA. If you're doing a lot of activities that fall outside of this, then we can organise, or you can pick up public liability policies relatively cheaply. We understand that a lot of these groups want every single part of the fundraising that they earn to go directly towards supporting the cause. But if you are doing things outside those activities, you may need your own policy, because if someone takes action against you directly for activities outside of what's listed below previously, then the policy is not going to be there to protect you. Building and contents insurance and volunteers insurance for the support group activities outside of monthly meetings and fundraising exclusively for PCFA. There's no cover for cyber insurance. Again, the cyber insurance policy that PCFA have can only cover them, and that's because of everyone using different systems and different control. So their policy can't extend to your groups. And corporate travel insurance. All right, so one of the questions, are there any questions particularly around some of the policies that are not covered?
There's a question here from Doug. What's an approximate cost for a group having their own liability cover?
So it's going to depend on how much revenue the group's going to generate per year. And also if you're going to declare any activities you're doing that fall outside what most insurers are happy with. If you're doing any high risk activities, particularly gym or exercise, or you wanted to do some swimming or something that's outside of the normal, it may cost a bit more. But we've had one of my colleagues assisting some of the support groups that have come to us directly. And I think at about $300, you can get your own liability policy. I think it's a rough approximate cost.
Graham's, we're running awareness sessions at supermarkets in our area in September, run by volunteers. Are we not covered?
No, so awareness sessions are fine. You're just attending a supermarket, probably handing out pamphlets, as long as it's nothing outside of awareness. So if you're doing a fun run or something like that up and down the main strip, that wouldn't be covered. But if you're just, setting up a desk out the front of the supermarket, possibly handing out brochures, then that would be covered.
I think Brian sort of has said some comments earlier that I think his group has been provided some coverage from Gow-Gates, and appreciated the help there, Nicole. So that's good feedback.
Yeah, my colleague Julian's been helping the support groups. We've just created a little bit of separation between the two. But yes, please feel free to contact us, or look, there's no pressure. You can use anyone you want, but we're here if you'd like us to assist.
And Nicole and the team at Gow-Gates have been working with me probably now for close on 10 months, working through what support groups do and getting a really good understanding. So they've got a good, good knowledge of what the support groups do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. And Jim, I see there's a question there that groups should not be excluded from raising funds for their own group in addition to PCFA. Well, there's a I can understand your concern there, and recognise that that's a really good question. Happy to have and listen to that on a case by case basis, or the event that you might be doing. Happy to work with you what that might look like, um, and how we can work with you on each specific event, and that goes for everyone.
And I'll just touch on that again. This is not PCFA trying to be difficult. It is the insurer's requirements, because if you decide to fundraise for your own group and you may not go to PCFA for authority to fundraise because you're fundraising for your own group, they don't know exactly what activities you're doing. And that makes the insurer nervous because they don't know what they're covering. So they put these things in place just to basically have some idea. And so PCFA know exactly what events they're covering, and it's really there to just protect the policy and ensure it responds where it's required.
Okay. Another comment here from Janice. Julian from Gow-Gates has provided invaluable help. Some good feedback again. And yourself, Nicole, from that looks
Yeah.
like from the Dubbo Prostate Cancer Support Group, who have an ABN as well.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
look,
Janice.
Julian is really helpful. So if anyone does need to set up their own policy, he's happy to assist there, and he has assisted a few people. So like I mentioned, the public liability policies, I believe, end up being about $300, and that would allow you more flexibility if you're wanting to sort of do your own things that fall outside what the policy and hands for the insurer allow this policy to extend to for the support groups.
Well, I feel like we possibly have answered a lot of the questions there. Um, just want to put a shout out again. If there are any other questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat. Um, if you don't have access to a keyboard, you're welcome to put your hand up, and we can and come off mute. We can answer those questions as well.
I just saw that message from Tony.
Oh, yeah.
This is particularly where we have assisted. So the question was, at some of our information presentations, we're giving donations, some of which the donor suggests the money needs to stay in the area. So that is a situation where it might be beneficial to get your own policy, and this is what we helped one of the other support groups with, because the money had to stay in the area. And I believe the intention was to give some of it to PCFA and then some of it to another cancer support group that helps people in regional areas maybe travel to Sydney for cancer treatment. So they did set up their own policy because I think the donation at the event they were going to was going to make that well worthwhile. So as mentioned, it's about $300, I believe. So if something like that comes up, you can contact us. And if you just give us a little bit of time, we can set that up relatively quickly for you.
And we can also talk to each support group. So let's say there's a sum of money that comes in for the local area that needs to specifically stay in that local area. We would love to talk to you about what that might look like or could look like to stay in your local area. Not all opportunities are available for us to keep the money locally because we don't either have a service in that area, we may not have a cancer nurse. But some of the groups have said to us, well, our men ring the PCFA telenursing or the telecounselling service. Can our money go towards that? And of course it can, which is very invaluable at the moment. We've had seeing record demand for those services. So we would love to have that conversation with you and work with you to look at what that could look like either locally or more of a national service that's available for people in your regional areas, perhaps. John has asked a question here. Coverage for attendees at monthly meetings, including office holders. So attendees, Nicole, of a support group meeting on a monthly meeting?
So covered for sort of public liability or covered for voluntary
I would say
workers?
public liability. So an attendee, they're not a committee leader or committee member. They're just an attendee, a guest of that group attending to a support group?
Yes. So if an attendee who was a part of the support group caused something to be damaged, the claim would come through to the public liability policy, not that attendee directly, because they were attending that event organised by the support group. So if they were to damage something, or they left their bag out and someone tripped over it and broke their ankle and wanted to take action against the support group, then the policy would be there to protect them. Yes.
And because they're not volunteering, they're just attending an event, they're not coming under our volunteer insurance. Is that right?
Yeah, they wouldn't. Well, they're not volunteering for you. They're just an attendee. So if
Yep.
they hurt themselves, most of the group meetings, from what I understand, are held at licensed premises. So if they hurt themselves walking up a ramp at the RSL club, it's likely the RSL club's public liability would be the one to respond to that. But if another person at the RSL club tripped over an attendee's bag or something, then it's likely that the public liability for PCFA would attend to that.
Thanks, John.
Perfect.
I think that might be all of the questions. Final shout out. All questions are valid questions.
And look, if any more questions come up, please reach out to Mitch and he can pass those across, and we can ensure they get answered if you think of something following this webinar as well.
Well, Nicole, I think we might finish up there. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. If you do have any questions about today's session, please give us a call on 1800 22 0099 or email inquiries@pcfa.org.au. You also may email the support network at pcfa.org.au website email too. Thank you so much, Nicole, for your wisdom and your experience in sharing your knowledge around public liability insurance and volunteer workers insurance. I'm sure our members, our support group leaders found that invaluable. Just a reminder, everyone, that today's discussion has been recorded and will be posted to the PCFA YouTube site in the coming week, and also a link will be sent out in the support group e-newsletter. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. It's great to have you on board, and have a lovely day.
Thank you very much.